Okay, welcome back to another episode of Transcendental Brain Training Foundations. In this video, we are going to speak to the evolution of our experience. So this is the mental maturation piece. If I'm going to feed it into that model, we start out in our egoic orientation as having different parts of ourselves. And this happens when we kind of have the idea that all of me isn't fully accepted here. We get feedback from the world, right? Even if we had the greatest parents ever, even if we'd say like, "Oh, I had no childhood trauma. I don't have complex post-traumatic stress disorder from my childhood," and even if that is your experience in the world, whether it's in school or with friends, inevitably what happens is we move through contexts where certain aspects of us, people say, "I like this." And other aspects of us, they say, "Oh, I don't like this." Because this is what's in the collective, right? Judgment. This is good. This is bad. And so what we end up doing is creating parts of ourselves. So my background, my academic background is psychology, neuroscience, cognitive sciences. And so in psychology, when we're talking about gestalt is the parts of ourselves. It's in the humanistic field. So the parts of ourselves, we have many parts to our psyche. And what can I say about these parts? Each of these parts, they have different goals, different personalities, you would say, almost different ideas, different values. They're different ages. Internal family systems is based on how these parts relate with each other and how they relate with others, how our internal family system will then relate with other systems externally, outside of us relationally. And there's two metaphors I often use when I talk about parts. One is on a soccer field. The job of a goalie is very different than the job of a striker and different from the job of the coach, right? Each of these, they each have roles and they have to play their roles. Now, if the goalie did the striker's job, that wouldn't be useful for the system because then we don't want to be protecting the goal, right? No goal creep there. And then the other metaphor I often use is in a boardroom, at a board table. If you've ever been to a board meeting, you'd find around the table, there's the director of HR is one role, the director of finance is another role, head of technology, all these different roles, right? And they each have different job functions. And because of their different job functions, they have a different perspective and a different agenda that they bring into the space. So let's say very curious if you can hear the rattling in the hallway. Anyway, it's distracting me a little bit. Can you tell? Anyway, come back to my point. My point of the board table. When the director of HR is making their recommendations and the director of finance is saying, "No, I don't agree with that," they have different goals, like within their own role. Yet in a well-functioning organization like an all-star soccer team, there's a respect for each other's role and a recognition that each other's role is valid and valuable, right? So it's an understanding that it's like we are working together for the good of the organization. Now, this is what we ultimately want with our parts. And this is what we do in this process in TBT with our parts. When we work with our parts is, I sit on a football. You're wondering what that is. when we work with our parts is to really befriend them, because we want to create a culture, internal environment of respect, appreciation, admiration for each of these parts. And as we do that, what happens is this in IFS and internal family systems, they're called burdens. The burdens are able to be released and these parts get integrated. So what actually happens is where there was once wounding, there becomes freedom on a psychological level. Yeah. Now, how does that happen? Well, around it, remember, I'm referencing our very first diagram. We have our spiritual saturation. This is self energy, and that's what envelops all of our parts, right? So we go from our parts together, all of our parts collectively form our personality. And what we want to do is become more expansive and more inclusive. And so as our personality becomes more, it's not necessarily gentler, but it's more inclusive, more welcoming, more loving to all of our different parts. Right. I was hosting a client intensive recently. She was speaking about how she had dreams, one where her partner had killed someone. She protected them. And then the second one was when she killed someone. And I was like, fantastic that your killer is coming online, because it's like these parts that need to know, hey, it's okay to be here. It's okay to be here. Given the right context, right? They get shut away saying, this person had a history, like many women do, of you can only be good and nice and happy. So those dreams, the subconscious bringing forth a representation of like my ferocity, my boundaries, all of these things, my anger is coming online. Like it's a wonderful thing. And so there was an ability to witness that and envelop that, love that. Beautiful. So personality becomes more inclusive. We become less what's the word I want to use here? When we say I am this and not that, it can be very uncomfortable, because then we end up in a situation where we recognize, oh, actually I am that too. Has that ever happened to anyone else? Just me here? Right? I am that too, actually. So this is the I am all of it. And so it expands. Then we come to presence. Presence is another way of saying the spirit, right? The soul's presence is, I would say, the level of spiritual saturation is and presence go hand in hand, right? Because in that diagram, I see spiritual saturation as I am. And then in the other side, you'd add anything after the I am. But there's just the I am, which is the purity of it, the purity of it. And that's in its form in the world, right? Because there's the formless, like before we can even make the words, like, and there's the formless. So we go beyond presence to pure awareness, and there are no words for that. There are just no words. We're in unspeakable territory here. It's just a felt sense experience of what I like to call the empty full, and that's what pure awareness is. And operating in that way in the world, well, we often recognize presence as, the level of soul. Like there's an intention for coming as, in this form, in this shape. What does the moment actually call for right now? This is where we actually are engaging and responding. And when you come to like the closer in you get, the more fixed and fragile and finite, right, these parts are, we feel more constricted. As we broaden, the more expansive we are and we feel within. And I don't want to make it seem like it's a linear thing, because it's not. It's a moment by moment thing. It's a dynamic thing. We'll get to that in the video on the Transcendental Brain Training tenets. Is there anything else I feel to share about this diagram, parts to pure awareness? Look, one thing that I recognize is when we know content really deeply, really fully, sometimes there are things in my awareness that I might not speak to because I don't yet know that you don't know them. So the invitation is, again, ask if there's queries. And I would just love to know, does this, is this clear to you? Does it make sense? Picking up what I'm putting down? Feel welcome to comment, to like, to subscribe. This is a new endeavor for me to teach in this way where I'm not getting real-time feedback from the people in my space. So I would love for you to engage with me in whatever way feels true for you. Yeah, we'll catch you on the next video.